Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I'm Emily Nimsicont here at the Nebraska Library Commission, filling in for your regular host, Krista Burns. NCompass Live is a weekly event here at the Commission, and it covers NLC activities and other library topics, sometimes presented by NLC staff and sometimes with guest presenters, just like today. These one-hour sessions are always free, and they're offered every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. They include a mixture of presentations, interviews, book reviews, mini training sessions, and Q&A sessions. Today, our presenter is Siobhan Champ-Blackwell, and she is here to talk to us about sexual health resources. Take it away, Siobhan.
Okay, thanks very much, Emily. I'm really glad to be here today, and I will say that on the chat box, Emily, I couldn't see when you said you were getting feedback, so if there are questions that people type in, I'm not seeing them, you could just interrupt me and let me know, because I like this to be as interactive as possible, so don't wait till the end to ask a question, just go ahead.
That's great. I'll keep an eye on the chat. I'll make sure that the questions get passed along to you. Also, I do want to point out that if you have a microphone for our audience members, we are more than happy to take questions via microphone. Just go ahead and type something into the question box and let me know that you want to be unmuted, and I'll unmute your mic and then you can talk, so you can ask questions that way too.
Oh, great. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Okay, so I am located at Creighton University in the Health Sciences Library with the National Network of Libraries of Medicine, the Mid-Continental region. Marty McGee has done several of these NCompass Live presentations, so I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the National Network of Libraries of Medicine. I do want to just give a plug for the organization and say that we are here in your state, and I know that there may be people from other states and other regional libraries here. You just need to type in nnlm.gov and you can find the regional medical library that serves your region, and we do training for librarians and healthcare providers on topics around health information access. So I'm delighted to be here today, and we're going to be talking about sexual health information. I'm going to present some information specific to populations and then talk a little bit about how to handle a reference interview, because this is really a delicate topic. I wanted to be sure to just spend a few minutes going over that reference interview piece. And I'd like to frame it in terms of, just think about it yourself. If you had a sexual health question, who would you ask? You know, would you really go up to the librarian and ask him or her this very personal question? And if you decided that you really had the nerve to go ahead and do that, would you really come out with the question that you wanted to know? Now, I'm sure that you all have experience with getting these kinds of questions in some form or another, and can probably think back to the situation that you were in with a patron who had a question, a personal question about sexual health and how they approached you. But just a few strategies to think about. One of the most important things for any health information question is providing a safe and confidential environment for the person. So if a person approaches you and you can see that they are a little hesitant to ask their question, always ask them, you know, do you want to step over here to to a more private area? When a person is asking questions about their health, especially about sexual health, most likely that's not going to be the first question that they ask. And it's just like any reference interview, asking those open-ended clarifying questions to really try to hone in on what they're asking. With all health information related questions, we hear that people are hesitant, librarians are hesitant to take on health information questions because they're not healthcare providers, which we are not. But we just want to remember to say to people, we're providing information only, and this is information to take back to your healthcare provider and to work with them on the information that they find. I think one of the things that to think about while you're hearing about some of these resources that are presented today is how can your library provide the answers to questions that are not being asked to you. Do you have, for example, on your library's webpage, a place that someone can go to that maybe will answer questions on sexual health? So, for example, this presentation is being set up so that it's, teens health, adults health, women's health, LGBT health. So do you have a section on your website that somebody can just go to and find these resources without actually having to ask somebody? So just some things to think about as we go through these online resources. And I wanted to start with talking about some resources for teenagers. There's so much activity, sexual activity going on with teenagers today, and at a younger and younger age. So it's very important that our teenagers have access to health information. Every section that I talk about, we're going to start with Medlineplus. So if you are not familiar with Medlineplus, you will be more than familiar with it by the end of this discussion. It's divided up nicely in this on the home page. Excuse me for just a minute, I want to make this a bigger screen. By these population groups here on the right-hand side. And so I got to that from the home page by just hitting the Health Topics tab here at the top. So I can just go ahead and select children and teenagers and see all of the different health topics that show up that are specific to that age group. You can see that there is a page specifically for teen health. We'll take a look at that in a minute. There's one on teen pregnancy. And as I scroll down, I can start to see some other topics that might be relevant. Child sexual abuse. I'm going to scroll down to the S's because that's where a lot of the sexual health resources are. So sexting, teen sexual health, child abuse, again, are in that section. We're just going to go ahead and take a look at one of the pages so I can take a look at teen health because there's going to be a lot of good information in teen health, and also you can take a look on the right-hand side to find related topics, including puberty, teen development, teen sexual health. So that's one important thing to remember, that these related topics are here. But as we scroll down through this page, you can see how the website is organized. Ages and stages of teens, health, is this my body? So these are resources that take you out to other websites. And we know that you can trust the resources that Medlineplus is sending you out to because medical librarians at the National Library of Medicine review all of the websites that get added into Medlineplus. So you know that a medical librarian has reviewed the information that's on this page. So Medlineplus is definitely a first resource to turn to in all of the health topics sections that we're going to take a look at. And of course each page has this Espanol button that will take you to that same page with the resources in Spanish that you can help your Spanish-speaking patrons to find. So I'm going back to English, and I'm going to go ahead and go into the teen sexual health page just for a minute to show you what that page looks like. Now, if there were other languages, which unfortunately there's not information in other languages other than Spanish, but along the right-hand side here under the related topics section, there would be a link to other language information. So that's Medlineplus for teen health and teen sexual health. Again, that's a very, you can see just a brief summary of some of the topics that might be of interest on Medlineplus to teens specifically. when you're talking about sexual health, it of course includes much more than just sexual health. Health in general has an impact on sexual health, so knowing about this resource of Medlineplus will also help with other topics that come up in a conversation when the question is about sexuality. One of my favorite resources for teenagers in general and for kids is the Nemours website. They have this fabulous resource for teens, kids, parents. You can see the tabs here on the top. And there's an educators section that I'll show you as well. But if you look at the section that's devoted to teens, there's a couple of resources that you might want to take a look at. Your Body takes you into seeing information. A lot of times sexuality for teenagers is about their concept of their body, so there's just some information about Body Beautiful. And then when you go to the Body Basics library, there's some good information here as well. I can click on, for example, the female reproductive system and find some great background information on reproduction. But there is also a topic just on sexual health. So each of these different sections, when you click on that plus button, goes down into different articles that are included in this website. So we have, for example, a Guy's Guide to Body Image. So the table of contents is included here. It just went away. What's in this article? There we go. So this is what gets covered in this article. And again, there's an Espanol button, so you can go ahead and click that button and see the article in Spanish. I wanted to show you while we're on this page that's got all of this fabulous information for teenagers, I want to be sure that you see the For Parents section, because there in here under the Growth and Development resource, there's some good things for parents to understand in the Growing Up section about what's happening to their teenager and how to help prepare their teenagers for their changing bodies. So I think that's a great section as well to remember about if you have a parent who's coming into the library and wants information on how to help their teenager. And then when you're on this parents page, you can see this link. I wish they had a tab at the top that said for teachers, but they don't. So you have to know that it's here in the parents page. Teachers, do you need health lessons? And so clicking on that will show you that there's a curriculum guidelines to kids' health in the classroom. And we could take a look at teachers' guides from grades 6 through 8, and they're divided into 3 sections. So there's one on the human body, and they're broken up into different resources, different sections. The personal health is usually the one that has more on, for example, it has a puberty and growing up section. So a great thing for teachers to know about, because they're also dealing with sexuality in the students that they are teaching every day. So this is one of my favorite sites when we're thinking about teenagers and sexuality. Go Ask Alice is a resource that's been around for a while. It's really doesn't play any games here. The questions that get asked on Go Ask Alice are really questions that teenagers have. And if you take a look at the sexuality section, you'll see the kinds of questions that get asked. You know, how to kiss, how do I fix my hickey, things like that. That really, these are ones that if you have a teenager who really wants to know a lot about sexuality, this is a great place to send them. And it's one that you probably want to think about where you want it to be on your website with your library. but it's definitely an important resource for teenagers because it will answer these really important questions that teenagers have. I think that we're going to, I know I'm going to send this resource to the Commission. And Emily, can you answer this for me? Will it be posted?
Yes. Anything you send us will be posted. Any links that you mentioned we're going to put on the Commission's Delicious account, and we'll make that available when the recording is available.
Okay. So I'm not going to go and take a look at all of these, but I just wanted to make sure you knew there's a ton of stuff out there. And we can just begin to talk about, I mean, we can do a whole class just on teenagers. So we're just getting a review. So all of these websites also exist and are great resources. Moving on from teenagers, I wanted to talk about gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender resources. Again, Medlineplus has a wonderful resource just on gay, lesbian, and transgender health. So make sure that you don't forget to go to Medlineplus as a great starting point. One of the things that's nice about Medlineplus is that it will take you to links that might get you information from other resources that maybe don't get talked about today. So for example, I don't think that I highlighted the Gay Lesbian Medical Association, but here's a link to a resource from that organization. So this is another way to find out other organizations and resources that deal with these issues. So starting it with Medlineplus can help you to find other trustworthy resources to turn to. The CDC has a great website on LGBT health and has some videos and statistics, and that's a nice thing to have access to. So it's not just information on sexuality questions, but gets you a little bit more statistics from the CDC. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, I like the two, they call them web treats. So it's their sections on health information. And I wanted to point out this one on transgender health because what they have done on this page is, again, setting you to information from other websites and other resources that might give you more answers to questions than Medlineplus is a great general overview, but if you're wanting some more deeper information, you might be able to find some answers on these resources from the American Congress of Obstetrics and Gynecologists. So a good tool for when you're trying to find a little bit more. And I wanted to make sure you knew about the Heartland Pride, which is a resource here in the Heartland, in Nebraska and western Iowa. So there's some events that they hold all the time, like this walk-run. They have board meetings. They have a lot of events that go on here in the Heartland. So you might want to know about that resource. And then this GLBT near me is a place where you can just enter a zip code, and I'm just going to enter the zip code for Creighton, which is where I am right now, and within 100 miles, and I get a directory of resources, starting with A for what resources help me within a 100-mile radius of Omaha with AIDS. The Nebraska AIDS Project shows up here. We also have bars and clubs, businesses, so what businesses are GLBT friendly. So a nice place, you know, if you're not in the Omaha area, you can put in your own zip code and you can find local resources that will help you to guide patrons to finding out local support organizations. And I wanted again to just include these other resources to turn to. So if a gay or lesbian couple want to adopt, there's some resources for them. For schools, the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, and then 2 resources for aging GLBT population. You know, things that we need to be keeping in mind are communities for gay couples where they will feel comfortable living if they're not able to live on their own. Resources, for example, from SAGE talk about how to set up when you're, if one part of the couple, if one person in the partnership is in the hospital, how to make sure that you have legal paperwork so that the other person in that relationship is the primary caregiver and has the legal paperwork is in place for them to be able to make decisions for their partners if they're unable to. So there's a lot of issues around elders, GLBT elders, and aging that are important for people to know about. So I'm going to move on to resources for women. And I don't see any questions. I know it's hard to sit there and just hear about resources one right after the other. So if you have a question that came up in your library and you want to enter it into the chat box, go ahead and do that. And as we go through some of these resources, maybe we can find some answers to some questions that you have faced from patrons that have come into your library. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about these resources for women. Again, Medlineplus. So we all know Medlineplus is going to be my first resource to turn to. And there's a lot of information for women around sexuality because for women, of course, there's reproductive questions dealing with pregnancy and childbirth, postpartum, things like that that are really specific just to women. So besides Medlineplus, we have womenshealth.gov. And I want to show you a few things on this website that I think are just marvelous resources for libraries to know about. So first of all, there is actually a breastfeeding helpline. And you have an 800 number here. We can click on the Learn More because I think that there's also the number is available in Spanish. Yes, so you can call and they have someone English or Spanish speaking. Down here in the publication section for women's health is really a great resource to know about. But I'm just going to, for now, click on the Women's Health Calendar. And you can order this publication. Just go on in and fill it out, and they'll let each library or each organization have one only, but you can order one English and one Spanish, and just fill this in, and they'll send it to your library. And then I'm assuming that they're going to do this next year as well. You can take a look at and download the printer-friendly version in English or in Spanish for the 2011 calendar. And this is a 59-page calendar. So what's great about it is the calendar piece is actually only a few pages. They have each month takes one page. But what they've done is they have all of these health tips. So one of the things that I like to do is just go in and take a look at it, and there might be a section that you just want to print out. You have the PDF that you've saved on your desktop, and you can go ahead. I'm going to scroll really quickly through all of the months, but you can see how nice it is. But I might want to print this, how to take charge of your health page. Maybe I'm making, maybe you're making a bulletin board for your library. So this would be a nice piece to add onto your bulletin board. Nice pictures. It's laid out very nicely and divided into different sections. So a great resource, I think, to find that kind of information. So I'm going to go back to the home page because another good resource that they have is this health guide for women, which again you can order or you can view the book online. I think there is a cost to this, about $25. But you can actually just view the book online as well. And you can see the different chapters that you can download. And there is a section on sexually transmitted diseases, HIV/AIDS, reproductive health, pregnancy, breastfeeding. So in terms of sexuality, there's a lot in this book. And it comes from womenshealth.gov, so it would really be a good, if you wanted to have a print resource in your library, this is a great resource to have on hand. They do have a lot of publications that you can get from womenshealth.gov, so I think a lot of them are fact sheets that they want you just to print out yourself. But it's a good thing, again, to take a look at and either have handouts at your library if you're doing a presentation or something to put on a bulletin board. So these are some great resources to take a look at from womenshealth.gov. Now, although we're on women's health, I did want to take a look at girls' health because this is kind of a subset of the womenshealth.gov. It's girlshealth.gov, and they have, again, these sections on your body and on relationships that would be valuable for young women who are trying to find out more information about reproductive and sexuality as a teenager. So another really good resource that's part of the womenshealth.gov website, just aimed at girls. And I like this, your reproductive health, your sexuality, talking to your parents about sex. So some good topics that come up in the girls' health. Oh, and they also have a teen survival guide, which I think is really nice. You can see, I was thinking that there was a way to order this as well, but I'm not sure. But it does have, you can get the PDF file here on the right-hand side of the page, or you can just take a look at it at the table of contents. So I like all of these different guides that show up on these websites because I think when we're thinking about how can we help our teenagers, how can we help our patrons find the information without them having to ask us, this is one of the ways you can do that, is to have these guides available. Now, men have
Siobhan?
Yes.
Can I interrupt for a second? We do have one
please.
person who has typed in a scenario of information that one of their patrons was looking for. Can you hear me now? Siobhan?
Okay, Emily, I'm going to keep talking because I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, let's see. I'm going to type in the chat that I can hear you just fine.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep talking. So just to interrupt any time, Emily. You're probably wondering what this picture of a canary in the cave is. You all know that when the canary dies, that means get out of the cave because there's no oxygen. And so men have a canary in their pants. If men have erectile dysfunction, that's a sign that they have a serious heart condition. And in fact, men with erectile dysfunction are considered cardiac patients unless it's proven otherwise. So that's a pretty big deal. AHRQ, I don't remember what the letters stand for, but it's a government research website. They do a lot of great work. They have come up with a Healthy Men campaign based on the fact that men are 24% less likely than women to have visited a doctor within the past year, and they just don't take care of themselves as well as women do. So they've worked with the Ad Council to come up with this campaign called Healthy Men, and it's a great resource. How to talk with your doctor if you're a man, how to get tests, how to know your prescriptions. So this isn't specifically about sexuality unless you think back to the fact that men don't go to the doctor, and so if we can get them to the doctor and get some of these, get some things diagnosed, that's an important part of their sexuality. So we have a question from someone. A person who has severe PMS who ended in jail, looking for someone to help, and the only suggestion was for a mental health clinic or their physician. Is there somewhere else I could have referred them to? Wow, that's a great question. One of the things that you could take a look at, there are, I would think that the first place is to find out if they do have a physician, because there are sexual health counselors, and I'm not, I don't know if that's the appropriate person, but definitely this is one that would start with their own healthcare provider, and hopefully if they have severe PMS, they are under care with an obstetrician gynecologist. If they're not, I'm not sure that they'll get the services that they need in jail, but that would be how I would. Again, this is where we start to make sure that we are letting people know that we're not diagnosing, we're helping them find information. And so, I would go to Medlineplus, okay, because that's where I always start everything, and I would go to the topic for PMS. And so I'm going to just go ahead and go there to PMS. It should just be under there, and then just take a look at what resources they talk about, and see if they have anything to dealing with psychiatric care as well. And then that would take you maybe again to this American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists that we took a look at in terms of GLBT health. So that would be for me the indication that something that severe needs to go, that person needs to be seeing a specialist, but they can only get to that through their own healthcare provider. So I think, what you did is in referring them on to a mental health clinic or their physician is right on target. That is what they really need to do. Okay, thanks for that question. Okay, so we'll get back to men's health, in remembering that men do need to have, this campaign is just started with men not going to see their doctors, and they really have a lot worse health outcomes than women do. So we can go to Medlineplus again and find all of these great resources for men's health. The CDC also has a wonderful page for men's health, and they have a section on gay and bisexual men's health, so another place to go to if you have patrons who are looking for GLBT. They also have, I think this Man Up is another one. Oh yeah, it's another part of the campaign where you can send the men in your life this online card to make sure that they get their checkup, and this is part of that AHRQ campaign. So I like that, you know, be a man, go and see the doctor. So women's health has a section on men's sexual health because women who are in relationships with men, who have fathers, who have sons, you know, men's health affects women's health. So there's some good resources here for women to find information to provide the men in their lives. And now I included this. I don't know very much about the Men's Health Network. I just actually found them when I was doing some research for this class. The reason that I included it is because they have this blueprint for men's health. And again, I was trying to find some resources that you could have in your library so that people aren't actually having to come and ask questions. But I will say that you know, it's a nonprofit agency, but I don't know a lot about them. They do have chapters in different states. You know, they have received this rating from a charity navigator. So they, on the surface, seem to be doing things the way that, you know, when you look at a resource, they seem to be doing things in a way that makes them legitimate. But I'm going to just put a little caveat on them that I haven't heard of them before, so just use a little caution when you go to them. Now, aging and sexuality is probably a topic that that you might get in your library, or you might not. One of the things that I saw that it's not online anymore, but it was one of my favorite resources for aging and sexuality, was a group down in Florida. One of the Jewish community centers in Florida made a YouTube video using claymation characters, where they talked about sexuality, and you know, when an older person who's been married for maybe 30 or 40 years to the same partner, and one person in the partnership passes away, now you have a single person who maybe is getting back into the dating scene after 40 years. Well, we know how over the last 40 years sexuality is totally different. And people think that you know, they're not familiar with having to be protected from HIV/AIDS and STDs. So it's a whole new world for some older people who haven't been sexually active outside of marriage for a long, long time, and it's a whole new journey for them. So they have questions, and they're not sure how to navigate the system. So besides Medlineplus, the National Institutes on Aging has some great resources, and they do have on healthy aging. I think this is the section where this is another place to find. I just want to show you this in general. Another place to find some great free resources and great publications that you can have to hand out at your library. They have one on sexuality, and I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's, if I click on this, oh, they have an age page called Sexuality in Later Life. So we could do a search for that. Let's see if I... So just by doing a search for that, I can find this brochure that's a PDF, or I can order copies, and it's in Spanish. So some nice information for seniors. NIH Senior Health is a great resource from the National Library of Medicine if you don't know about it. They don't specifically talk about sexuality, but they do have great health topics in general, and healthy aging is a good topic to take a look at. One of the things that's nice, if you're not familiar with it, is this trainer's toolkit, where they have a curriculum set up with a lesson plan, starting with how to help students who don't have very much computer experience, all the way through how to help them navigate Medlineplus, how to evaluate websites. And it's made for libraries and organizations to use to train seniors and how to find trustworthy information online and how to evaluate it. So not specifically sexuality, but good information to know about. And the Mayo Clinic has some good resources on healthy aging that includes these two topics: sexual health and aging, keep the passion alive, and senior sex tips for men. So the Mayo Clinic, you can see, first of all, it just has this topic, healthy aging over 50, but then they have also these subheadings with some good information from the Mayo Clinic. I wanted to make sure to touch on HIV/AIDS in this topic. This is really, HIV/AIDS is not going away. It's still of concern in today's world. And it's very much of concern to minority populations, but to the public in general. So I wanted to be sure that we took a look at some resources where if you have patients who are coming into or patrons who are coming in who are HIV positive, where they can find information. And AIDS Info is a great resource especially for healthcare providers, but for anytime you have patrons who come in who have chronic illness, they are very aware of all of the general information, and they want a little bit more in-depth information. And so on AIDS Info, they can go in and you can view and download the guidelines to treatment. And so this is a great place to take a look at what are the guidelines for how to treat HIV/AIDS for adults in the different populations. What about maternal-child transmission? You might have a woman who comes in who is pregnant and has found out that she's HIV positive. This is a place to go and find out what the guidelines are for that. They also have a great resource on the different drugs that are prescribed for people with HIV/AIDS. So you can take a look at the different, we'll just go in and take a look at what it looks like. So it tells you why the person with HIV/AIDS has that, what are things that they might want to make sure that they've told their doctor about, the side effects, interactions, and then the clinical trials that are in place around for HIV/AIDS and that drug. And that's another topic that's on here, the clinical trials. So clinicaltrials.gov is a great resource for anyone to know about, to see what trials are going on around different disease that they may want to get into some of these trials. But if you go into clinical trials through the AIDS information website, it already does a filter and searches only those that are related to HIV/AIDS. From the National Library of Medicine, it also is this resource on HIV/AIDS, and it has a section that's especially for the public. So you can find some great resources as starting points. Of course, Medlineplus is in there. That's not a surprise to anyone, right? It's got the link to AIDS Info. So there's a lot of good information in here as well. And this is just in the section for the public. So if you are having students or teachers who come in, there's a section for them to take a look at different resources that might help them in their reports for class or in their teaching. There's the link to journal articles, books, and audiovisuals. So where can you go and find information related to HIV/AIDS in the professional literature. For those of you who are on the call who are in the state of Nebraska, I hope that you know about CHEERS at UNMC. I'm going to go ahead and go into the CHEERS website. It's through the library, the McGugin Library of Medicine. They have a resource that anyone in the state of Nebraska can call the library or email them with a health information question. So here's the phone number or the email, or you can fill out this form online, and they will search their collection and send the information out in response to the request that you have made. Now they like to work with libraries as their first stop, so that they prefer not to have individuals contacting them directly. They prefer that the individual works with their local library and then the library contacts them, but they're very open also to an individual just contacting them directly. So if you're in a library in Nebraska, hopefully you know about CHEERS already. I know they do a lot of publication and promoting about it, but don't forget about it. And there's a couple of different resources on getting yourself tested and making, just other resources to turn to for HIV/AIDS. So sexual health is really, it is part of your overall health. So any of the resources that we've talked about usually have more than just sexuality attached to the resources, but we've highlighted just the sexuality sections. It's, again, just like in the question that we had, making sure that people know that this is information that they should be taking back to their healthcare providers, and we are only as librarians helping them find reliable and trustworthy resources online so they're not doing Google searches and finding things that maybe are incorrect or biased. So I hope that this answered some questions that you came with, that you're able to now identify some resources specific to populations and know some strategies on handling the reference interview. So are there any other questions either that you've had in your library or that came up during the conversation?
Can you hear me now, Siobhan?
And it doesn't sound like it, Emily, so I think with that, I will send this PowerPoint to the Library Commission, and I think with the recording, and it'll be posted along with the recording. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Siobhan. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if other people can hear me. I'm not quite sure what the problem is here, but if you can hear me, thank you to you all for attending, and we hope you'll come back for another NCompass Live.